Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you the second video in the Defining the Goosebumps Eras series. And in case you missed the last video where I covered the first two eras in one, classical and neoclassical, I will put a link in the description of this video so you can be up to speed and caught up to where we are now, which we are on the third era, which I will be doing by itself in this video. And that third era is known as the Reprint Era. Now, the reprint era went from August of 2003 through July of 2007. And it's important to encompass all reprints in the reprint era. Since it was just reprints, it's safe to include those. I know in my last video I did not include the Fright Light edition, the Monster editions, stuff like that, because I was more focusing on the original stories in that era, because that's basically what defines the classical era and the neoclassical era. As in the reprint era, it's mainly about getting product out for release to kind of test the waters to see if Goosebumps can come back in some way, shape, or form. And as we all know, it did, partially due to the success of the re-release of the books, and then, of course, the DVD releases as well. But we're not going to be covering the DVDs, we're only going to be covering the books. Alright, so let's get started. Where did the reprint era begin? So it's important to understand between February of 2000 and July of 2003, there was no Goosebumps books being released. If they were being printed overseas because they still had the rights to print them or what have you. But in North America, there was absolutely no Goosebumps coming out. Then randomly in August of 2003, a sudden relaunch happened. And it started with two books, and you need to know these. I don't have them on hand, but I do have something similar. Alright, so the first two books to kick off the reprint era are two collected editions, mind you. And the two collected editions are the Monster Blood collection, which is a hardcover book, and then the Campfire collection, which is a hardcover book as well. Those both came out in August of 2003 and kicked off the relaunch and the re-releases of Goosebumps. Now, immediately after those started the 4-year stretch of re-release individual books. And what I mean are books that resemble this. This is a typical re-release book. They will have one uniform cover with the logo looking like this. They'll have the Scholastic logo on the bottom. They'll have this spine with the yellow right here, and then the Goosebumps logo looks like this. And then the back gives you a list of all the books. So that's what a typical re-release from the reprint era will look like. So in 2003, September of 2003 specifically, starting with Welcome to Dead House, started this new wave of reprints. Now, these reprints lasted from September of 2003 all the way until June of 2007. And they only released 57 out of the original 62. So the reprint era for individual books was mainly focused on reprinting older Classic 62 books. However, there is one collection that I do have on hand I can show you in just a minute that isn't OG62, and it was the only book they released that wasn't OG62 related. So they printed 57 out of the 62, and I'll give you a list of the 5 they didn't print in the re-release or reprint period between this time, between 2003 and 2007, and that was Phantom of the Auditorium, Legend of the Lost Legend, Werewolf Skin, I Live in Your Basement, and Monster Blood 4. For a while, those books had no reprints, and they were considered the rare ones, the rare 5. Then, of course, as you know, when classic Goosebumps, which I'm not getting into in this video because that's a whole different era, but as we'll talk about in the next installment, we'll get into how some of those ended up getting reprinted and they're considered not that rare anymore. But they used to be. So the individual books, there was 57 of them. Like I said, it went from September of 2003 all the way until June of 2007. So for the individual books, that's basically what you're looking at. And I already told you the 5 that are missing. Now, there were 6 total collections, technically 7, but I'm going to save the 7th one for last here. There were 6 total collections, and the collections started in August of 2003, and for the sake of, including the 7th one, went all the way to April of 2006. Now, I'll tell you which ones they are in just a sec. Obviously, you already know the Campfire and the Monster Blood started it all. But the next ones to follow, surprisingly, were in July of 2004. There came a Tales to Give You Goosebumps hardcover, which this is the only non-OG62 release they had in the reprint era. And it looks like this. And it includes the first 3 books of the Tales to Give You Goosebumps series, and it contains 30 total stories, which is all the stories from the first 3 books. And then in November of 2004, there came 2 little paperback collections that kind of look like this. I do have one of them. This is the second one, the Vanishing Collection. And the first one was the Hair Raising Collection. And in the Vanishing Collection, it reprints Say Cheese and Die, Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, and Let's Get Invisible. And in the Hair Raising Collection, it reprints Welcome to Dead House, Stay Out of the Basement, and Monster Blood. And that's important to know because there's a little factoid near the end that might blow your mind that I want to include. But yeah, these little paperback ones, they only made 2 of these types here. And people used to be able to find them in bookstores like Barnes & Noble and stuff, Walmart. And then there was a huge release of them. They ended up in Five Belows across the country, and maybe that's how a lot of people ended up getting these. Like mine right here still has a Five Below sticker on it. So yeah, these ended up in Five Below somehow, so cool little factoid there. And then the last collection they released, minus the 7th one, which I'm going to save for after I give you this information here, came out in January of 2005, and that was the Living Dummy Collection. The Living Dummy Collection told Night of the Living Dummy 1 through 3. And that's important to know for this last one because for the most part, people think that as far as like just standard book releases, those 6 I just mentioned, plus the 57 books, most people just say that's where the reprint era is. But we have to include some other stuff too, which before I get into the 7th collection, something else came out around this time, around September of 2006, and I don't have any of these to share, but I'll tell you about them. They are the Goosebumps graphics, the original 3. Now, I'm not including Slappy's Tales of Horror because I came out in 2015, and that's going to be a different era. But these first 3 are important because the last of the Goosebumps graphics marks the end of the reprint era. So the first one released was Creepy Creatures, which came out in September of 2006. The second one was Terror Trips, which came out in sometime in 2007. I believe it was March. And then Scary Summer came out in July of 2007. Now, Scary Summer marks the end of the reprint era because in 2008, we have 2 really big things that happened that I will touch on in the next installment, but it'll make more sense when I get to that. Now, the unsung 7th collection here, and this is the final book in the reprint era that I'm talking about today. This one's a relative unknown reprint that happened in this time period, and this one happened in April of 2006. It wasn't monikered just under Goosebumps. It was printed in a collection of different series under Scholastic, mind you, and I'll show you the book in just a sec. Some of you may have seen this book on my channel before. I've kind of talked about it in a little bit of ways. And that book is Tales of Suspense for Boys. This is the 7th collection. Now, if you look on the cover, it says On the Run, Goosebumps, and Animorphs. Now, what's interesting about this is that it features a reprint of Welcome to Dead House, which makes in one era, Welcome to Dead House had 3 reprints. All right, so when I discovered this, I decided to look up information about which Goosebumps book had the most versions to it. Now, I'll tell you this right now, Welcome to Dead House holds the record with 7 versions. And I'll tell you what those versions are. So, of course, you have the initial release in Classic 62. And I'm including all the printings there. You know, I can easily go into variants and printings and stuff, but that's usually considered under further printings, not reprints. So for the sake of keeping it simple, Welcome to Dead House has the most reprints as well, if that makes it easier to follow. So the OG62, including all of those prints, that's one way to get it. The second way to get Welcome to Dead House was in Monster Edition 1, which was a hardcover collection in the 90s during the classical era. I didn't mention it in my video, but it does take place during that time. That is the first reprint of Welcome to Dead House. The second one, of course, which would be the 2003 version, which I don't have on hand, but that is the second reprint of Welcome to Dead House. The third reprint, which would be the Hair-Raising Collection, which, if you guys remembered, I kind of touched on. It looks like this, except it has Welcome to Dead House on the cover on the other one. So that's the third reprint. The fourth reprint, as you guys may know, is Tales of Suspense for Boys. That's important to know, because this marks the 4th time Welcome to Dead House got reprinted. Now, the 5th one everyone knows is Classic Goosebumps, which comes out, you know, in a different era, but there you go. And then the 6th reprint is in Retro Tins. A version of Welcome to Dead House came out in around 2015 in Retro Tins, and that's another completely different era we'll get into in a bit. But Welcome to Dead House holds the record for the most reprints. And the 2 books right underneath it are Night of the Living Dummy 1 and Night of the Living Dummy 2. And that's a really cool factoid. And I might touch on that, Night of the Living Dummy 1 and 2, in a few videos from now. And I'll tell you why they are the second place. But for today, I'm just talking about Welcome to Dead House. So yeah, this was basically the reprint era I just went over. So, like I said, you had the 57 single books here. You had 2 of these little paperback one collected editions. You had I think there was 4 of these hardcovers collections. I only have one of them for the video. Then you have Tales of Suspense for Boys. And then you have the 3 Goosebumps graphics. So, let's encompass the whole era and how many books total and how many stories total. Mind you, these are all reprints. These aren't individual stories, so don't take this into any, too serious of an account. I'm just counting all the reprints that were done and the stories that were told. So, the total amount of reprints in the entire reprint era was 64. That's including the graphics, the 57 original books, and the 7 collected editions. If that makes sense. Wait, I must have done my math wrong. Nope, there's 67. There are 67 total reprints in the reprint era. Now, for total stories, I already counted them up. There's 115 possible stories to get out of the reprint era. Mind you, they were all reprints, nothing original. And the reason why we're talking about the reprint era is to kind of get a feel about what the reprint era led to. And that, of course, is the rebirth of Goosebumps, which I'll get into the next video in defining the Goosebumps eras. So, I'm basically done here. So, let me know what you guys think about the reprint era. Did I miss anything? Do you guys think I have everything down? Let me know in the comment section. And let me know what you guys think. I'll see you next time.